What's up, folks? I'm Stardeus, and today I'm going to show you how to mod the Stardeus story generator, one that came with the new version 0.14 update. So in the Stardeus main menu, if we go to mods, and you go to about mods and open mod template right here, we're going to get this page where we can go to code and download a zip file of the Stardeus mod template. That's the first step to create a new mod. We're going to put it in the Stardeus mods folder. Actually, to open that mods folder, you can get back to Stardeus and there's the open user mods directory. If you click that, it will open the folder. So you can copy the path here. And when you're downloading the zip, you can paste the path. So it's the same path that was open here for me. And we could call this zip file, we'll just keep it Stardeus mod template. We're going to rename it after extracting. Now let's get back to that mod folder and let's extract the mod. I'm going to extract it to Stardeus mod template, but I'm going to rename it my storyteller or my story generator. So yeah, it's going to be a custom story generator version that we're going to make for ourselves. And if we open this folder here, my story generator, we right click it and you have VS Code installed, you can open it with code, or maybe you can use any other editor that you like. I like VS Code. So when you open this, this is your this is the mod template, right? It has a lot of stuff that you don't need. So we're going to start by deleting the stuff that we will not use, and it's most of it. So artwork, for example, just delete. Code, there will be no code here. Delete. Config, we will use something in the config, but we can delete the tunables. So just I'll leave the empty config folder. Definitions, delete. Graphics, delete. Libraries, delete. Basically only keep patches. I think we might need patches or not. We'll see. Translations, well, we can keep it. We might need the name for it. So mod cover is something that you have to change, but we're going to keep it for now. In the mod info, we're going to call this ID. We'll change it to my story generator without spaces. And in the name, we could do my story generator. This is going to be a nice name for this thing. Description will be something like, I don't know, balanced story generator with easier raids. What version? Let's start with 1.00. Game version, it's now 14. So let's do 14.0. And the rest is basically fine. So we have this. Now we'll need to know if the mod works. Let's go back and exit and start Stardeus one more time, just to see if the mod actually loads. In the mods, you can see my story generator, and it's indeed loading. If we open directory, we're jumping back to our story generator. Now, in order to patch or to modify the Stardeus story generators, you need to know how they work. So let's actually jump into the core mod. If you go to mods core game, open directory, you're going to have this. And you can open this whole thing with code as well. So this is the core. This is the core mod. Now, if we go to config, and by the way, in the core mod, there's this reference source code folder where you can find the C# implementation of most things. It contains like 95% of everything that ships with the game. So if you go to, for example, systems, story, and you can see implementations of various aspects and events, and yeah, you can make your own C# events. But right now, we're just gonna focus on simple things. We're gonna do the JSON tweaking. So it's in config, in the core config. story. And there's generators, for example. So if you look at balance story generator, which we'll be using as a base, we can see that there is, for example, an aspect for schedule rate balanced, right? And then let's say that you want to have your own generator, which will be based on balanced. So what you will do, you will basically notice which path is this, config story generators, and there's balanced JSON. So we're going to copy this file, and then we're going to go back to our mod. I'm going to Alt Tab to our mod right there. This is my story generator. We're going to create the same path. It was config story, and then the subfolder was generators. And then we're going to paste the balance, but it cannot be named balanced anymore because it's going to be your own. So let's call it my story gen. I'm going to change ID to my_story gen. And now everything that is in this file here is the same as in the balance story generator, but we can see that there's, for example, schedule, these aspects here, there's schedule rate balanced, right? So let's say we want to have another schedule for rates because we want easier rates. That's what that's the aim of this this mod, right? So let's do schedule rate my story gen, and to have that thing, well, we're going to have to find the schedule rate balanced in the core mod. So again, I'm going to switch to the core mod. I'm in the core mod right now, and there will be aspects, and in the aspects you have you have a list of files, list of JSON files. We can copy the schedule rate balanced. Just right-click, copy, and go back to our mod. So next to the generators in the story, let's create a folder called aspects and paste this. I'm going to rename that to match the name. So it's going to be schedule rate my story gen. And we double check the name here, so it would match schedule rate my story gen, schedule rate my story gen. It's exactly the same. Now, aspect ID schedule, this will not change. And what we will change is properties. So let me explain what these properties do. First, we have initial extra delay days, which is when you start a new game, how long are we waiting before the first raid? So we're waiting for 7 days. In the easier version, let's make it 21 days. So for 21 days when you start the game, nobody will be raiding you. Now we have this days curve on and days curve off. This tells us how many days we are expecting to have a raid, and then how many days we're expecting to relax after the last raid. So this curve on, let me actually draw to explain how it works. I'm going to put Obsidian. Let's go. Do I have something? Yeah, I have this here. So let's say there's this raid schedule right here. And these are the days on. This thick bar is the days when we can have a raid. So if this is the timeline, in the beginning we cannot have a raid, then there is a time when we can have a raid, and again a rest period, and then again when we can have a raid, and so on. So that time, days from 5 to 7. Also, I'm going to shortly explain how these curves work. So it's a curve. The float set of 0 and 5 and 1 and 7 means that first we will roll a random number from 0 to 1, and we'll get a value, right? So we'll get something, let's say 0.3, right? And then we will look at a curve. Let me actually visualize that. Let me visualize that curve really quickly. So there's the random number here, and there's the value on this axis. So the values defined in this file are 0, 5, 1, 7, which means that at 0 we get a 5. Let's say this is a 5, and at 1 we get 7. So this is like 0, 1, and this is 5, this is 7. Now, if we roll, as I explained here, when we roll a random number from 0 to 1, let's say we get 0.03. So we go to this curve here, we put a 0.03 right there, and we see where on the curve we have landed. So in 0.03, we're getting something like 5.5 days, right? If it was a 1, we would get 7 days. If it was 0, we would get 5 days. So that's just how we determine the randomness, right? So it could have more points. If you want to have a more complex curve, you can add more points. You could say at 0.5, we would have still 5 days, right? So if you had that, it would mean that this curve would be broken up like this, where anything between 0 and 0.5 would get 5, and then from 0 to 1, we would get from 5 to 7. So just in this case, the curve is just like that, from 5 to 7, right here. So I hope this makes it clear how the curves work. So what do we want to do to make this raid easier, right? We want to delay the rest period. Maybe we want to make shorter attack periods and longer rest periods, right? To make raids less frequent, to do this. So in that case, we go to days curve on, and we want this to be shorter. So let's say from 2 days to 3 days. Oh, sorry, I'm changing the core mod. I should not be changing the core mod. Let me undo that. Also, this is something to note. So when you're working with multiple projects and multiple files, always be careful of what you're editing, because if you're editing the wrong file, you're just not going to get the changes. So I'm going to switch back to my story generator right here. Yeah, you should double check which file you're editing. And now we're going to do from 2 to 3 days curve on. And we're going to do from 20 to 30 days curve off, which means that every time we get a raid, our rest period is growing to about 20 to 30 days. But is that really it? Is that really it? Let's take a look at the core mods. Other raid stuff. There's this event picker raid. What does that have? Yeah, so we'll probably want to change that as well. So the event picker, if we go back to our project, switching back to my story generator and switching back to generators my story gen, we have this, okay, we have the schedule. We just changed the schedule, right? So it handles calm and eventful periods. Then we have assigned story points. There's this point allowance. Let me quickly tell you about the point allowance. When you start the game, every time you get, every time you get the on schedule turned on, right? For example, if there's several aspects, there's several schedules. There's positive event schedule, negative event, neutral, raid. There's no drama schedule. It's either positive or negative or neutral. Yeah, so you get some points at the beginning. So let's say in the early game, you're going to get 5 points for raid, maybe 5 points for negative, 5 points for positive. But when you play a long time and your ship gets big, your colony gets strong, you might be getting like 50 points or 70 points or 60 points. And the story events have a cost. The more points you have, the more expensive story events you can get. So for example, if we look at some story events in the core mod, let's say storage capsule raid is an event. It costs 5 points. But if you look at multi-faction raid, which sends several breach capsules, it costs 30 points. So it's a more expensive event. So what can we do to make the raids easier? We can adjust the story point generation So if you go back to your project, my story gen, the story points are assigned in this point allowance aspect. So we have to copy point allowance rate balanced from core. Let's go back to aspects, point allowance rate balanced. Let's copy that. And let's jump over to my story gen into the aspects. I'm going to paste this. So it's going to again have to be renamed to point allowance rate my story gen. And here we're going to also rename this to my story gen to match point allowance rate my story gen. Now, what can we do here? We can see that there's some multiplier. It's probably going to scale things up and down. We can also check, if we were not sure, we can see how other point allowances are working. Like, for example, if we look at positive random, multiplied 3, positive balanced, negative random, multiplier 3. I'm not sure what this multiplier does right off from memory, so let me quickly check. Let's open schedule. No, point allowance, story aspect. And you can find this at the C# code, as I showed you. You can find this class in reference source code right here. So it's available for you. You can read it. And what does multiplier do? I think it's going to be on initialize. Multiplier is used to okay, if it's 0, it's 1, and then there's this point allowance multiplier. We're having this adjustment, and then this multiplier gets assigned. Difficulty level also changes this multiplier. Oh, so okay, so this is just how many, this is going to be, as I expected, this is going to be how many extra points are we allowing. So when we're doing this get point allowance, we're applying the multiplier, right? So meaning that if you want easier raids, you have to reduce the multiplier. So let's go to point allowance raid my story gen, and let's reduce the multiplier to 0.5, which means that we're going to have only half the points for raids instead of full points, right? And then there's these curves for how we calculate the points. So we're telling that we're going to calculate the points from workers, energy, days, net worth of the ship, and ship class points. So these curves can be found, by the way, since this is a curve with a string. It means that we can go to config, and there's curves folder, and you can just see the string. So for example, story points, workers here. This is the curve. You can also override that in your mod if you want, but it will affect all the mods, all the story generators. Number of robots in your team pointing to story events. So if you have 0 robots, you're going to have 0 points for robots. If you have 10 robots, you're going to have 7 points for robots, and so on. Yeah, so I think for the sake of simplicity, we will not adjust these curves because we have the multiplier, so we can just set this to half. So what we did right now with our mod, we made the schedule a little bit less frequent, which means we pushed these on periods apart and made them shorter. So there will be less frequent raids. And also we reduced the points that we allow, that we assign by half through this multiplier. And my story gen, let's double check. It's using the raid my story gen aspect and the event picker my story gen event picker raid balanced. And also, wait, I forgot that there's this raid controls periodic raids. There's raid balanced thing. Completely forgot that raids have their own aspect, which means that these changes here may not be enough to actually make it work, because I think, yeah, I now remember one thing. The schedule on and off, I think it's controlled by something else. It has to have the schedule, but I think that these values will be overridden by the final piece, which we're gonna look at it right now. Raid balanced right here. Yeah, see, there's this configuration for total colony strength, days till next random raid. So indeed, this schedule does not really just get pushed by that raid schedule. It also gets overridden by this raid aspect, which says, okay, if your colony is weak, we're going to give you more time to relax. If your colony is strong, you're going to get less time to relax, right? So we can now go copy this file, raid balanced, copy this, go to our aspects, paste, let's rename it raid _ my story gen. And initial extra delay days, let's bump that up to 20. I think that's what we did in the schedule. It was 21, but it doesn't matter. 20 will be enough. And then here, combat strength, total colony strength, arrow to days till next random raid. So with 0 strength, we have 20 days. With 1 strength, 20, 2, 18, 50 strength, 9, and so on. So let's say we want this to be more relaxed. We just increase the number. So with 0 strength, let's say 40 days. With 2 strength, 30 days. 3 strength, 29 days. 5 strength, maybe 27 days. 10 strength, 25 days. 20 strength, 23 days. 50 strength. See, from 9 to 20. So it's gonna be like way longer rest. 18 days at 300. So 18 days would be the minimum. Past 300 is going to stick to 18 days. So we just adjusted one more aspect. Let's not forget to change that in the story gen. Raid my story gen. And that's it. The rest is other aspects for other things. You can control stasis wake-ups. You can control positive, negative events. For example, if you want less negative events, you could do the same for the negative point allowance, reduce the points, or maybe change the schedule. Yeah, and now let's see if we can run this. Also, I think we're going to have to add a translation. So in the translations, to have a name, we'll have to have... I'm just going to delete all this. I think it's going to be storygen.mystorygen, and let's name it mystorygen. Let's see if that will work. For that, we're going to have to restart. By the way, there's one trick with graphics. If you have a high power, high memory graphics card, you can go to properties of Stardeus, especially if you're booting off in some water, and you can add a property in launch options called uncompressed textures. If you have this property, the game would launch faster because it will not be doing texture compression, but it will use, instead of 1 GB of visual RAM, it's going to use 4 GB today. Later, maybe more. But that's just something to keep in mind that you can do to make it boot faster. All right, now let's go to mods. It's still here. It's still working. If we start a new game, wrecked scenario or any other scenario, we can go to this and we can see that my storygen is in the list. You have now created your own first mod with a custom storygen, and you can run the game, and we'll see how we can debug the story, just so you know that there's some tools to debug. Well, the first thing you can do is in the command line. Okay, I'm gonna make it so you can see everything. In the command line, you can type story debug, and that opens this debug story system window. If you resume the game clock, it will fill up with a bunch of things. And here you'll see some things. So for example, you can see that negative is, these are the schedules, negative, positive, neutral, raid. Also you can hold control and hit plus or minus on the numpad to change the font size here. So you'll be able to read it better, but the list here could get a little long. Now nothing here is eligible because right now we have a calm period where nothing is happening. But there's ways to control those periods and see. And also we can see how much we'll wait for the first raid. Active cooldowns. For raid, we can see that there's 59 days. And then the raid schedule changes in 47 days. But since raid cooldown in this case is going to override this raid schedule here. So when the raid cooldown will end, the raid schedule will reset. So it's about 60 days. So 2 months without the raid. I think it's a little too long. But, well, it's up to you to configure it the way you like. Now, there's another thing you can do. There is a dev menu. It has a warning that it blocks achievements, but if you go here in the dev menu, I typed dev_menu in the console to open this window. But there's another way to open it. You can go to, let me quickly do that. Go to main menu here and settings. Current game settings, scroll all the way down, dev tools. If you click this, you're going to get the same thing if you don't want to mess with console commands. So here's the story events button. If you click that, you're going to get this huge panel which can control and list all the story events, and you can see and analyze what's working. So for example, if you want to toggle raids, you hit the toggle button here, and now you'll see that raids are now allowed, but raids also have the raid flag. So if you click on this raid flag, now raids are available and this schedule is allowed, and you're going to get raided in a minute, I guess. However, I can see that, okay, raid is still cooling down. How many points? We only have 2 points for raid. So since we are very weak, yeah, we have very little points. I think that just nothing can happen. Yeah, it cools down because it was unable to pick an event, since all events cost more than 2 points. But when we're going to get stronger, the raids will happen. So let me quickly spawn some. I'm going to enable sandbox mode. Spawn some robots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Our army gets stronger. Now we're going to get more points. Hopefully. If we toggle this raid schedule, we now have 6 points here. It was 2 before. So if we can toggle the raid, now we have a raiders approaching from the map edge. And you can see that we have a bit of raiders coming in. So that's how the story generator works. And this tool here, the story events tool in this debugger, is really powerful. You can do a lot of stuff here. For example, you can debug story events. Find some story event here. You can switch some tools here to show all. And you can search, for example, capsule. Green ones are the ones that are currently available. You can click there, see how, like, when was it last started, how many times we've seen it, what flags are involved, are the flags of cooling down or not. Can the story generator do that event? You can start the event yourself. Let's say we can start asteroid. If we switch that to on-demand all, we can get space asteroid and we can start this event. Now we get incoming asteroid. And yeah, so that's how you work with the story generator. You can close that debug. Close everything. And yeah, that's it. So we just made ourselves our own story generator. And that's how easy it was. Then if you want to share your story generator on the workshop, let me show you how to do that. First, of course, you make sure that the cover is not default, because the default cover will not be great. Now, there is no upload to Steam Workshop button here. But this is because if we click open in Steam Workshop, it's going to open the mod template. Since this is the mod template, this was a downloaded mod template, it's already in the workshop. But we want to change that, right? We want to have our own mod uploaded to the workshop. So let's go to my story generator, and we're going to work with mod info. In the mod info, we have to do two things. First, we do this Steam Workshop true. We're going to change that to true from false. Also, this comment here also says, also delete the Steam Workshop item ID file that came with the example mod. This one. So we delete that file. This file tells us what's the actual Steam Workshop ID. So if it doesn't exist, and if the mod info has this Steam Workshop true, we can now go restart the game again. Let me do that real quick. And now it's going to boot without the compressed textures because I changed that flag. So it's going to boot a little faster. But you're going to see the VRAM usage a little higher. Right now you can see like VRAM is 1.3, 1.9 gigabytes, 2.6 gigabytes. So it's loading faster, but it's using way more RAM. But for testing, it's pretty okay, I guess. And then we go to mods, my story generator. And you can see that the upload to Steam Workshop button has now been activated. And if you hit that button and hold it, it says validation failed because we have to start the game or load the game with this mod enabled. So that's some validation, which forces, oh, hold on, what's that? Oh, it's because we have deleted the Steam Workshop file, so that's okay. Actually, we can just ignore this. We have loaded the game. The game will check if there's no errors in the console. By the way, I'm opening the console with the tilde key below escape. And we exit back to main menu. Our mod was tested. It didn't produce any errors, which means that we can now upload it to Steam Workshop. And once you click this, wait a little bit, wait for it. Did it upload successful? Open web browser, and here's your mod. And you can subscribe it. Other people can subscribe it. I'm going to delete this one because this was just a test. This was just a test. So let me, where do I delete it? Here, delete. That's it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you're enjoying Stardeus, and happy modding. Have a good day.